Racist teacher humiliates black girl in front of the whole class in the classroom, but when she discovers that the girl is the daughter of the school principal, she is shocked. In a classroom where learning should flourish, a teacher loses herself in her rigidity and stereotypes, while a new student faces a challenge that could change their lives forever. Sarah Thompson, a conservative and strict teacher, never imagined that her deeply rooted beliefs could have such drastic consequences. When she humiliates Maya Williams, a newly arrived black student, what begins as an act of control transforms into a crisis of conscience that could threaten not only her career, but also the future of a young girl full of hopes. Maya, at 13 years old, is a bright, sensitive girl full of dreams. Coming from a middle-class family, she always stood out in her previous school. However, upon entering a new institution, she encounters a hostile environment. Sarah's classroom is a reflection of the prejudice that permeates society, and Maya soon finds herself underestimated and humiliated by her teacher. Despite her talent and intelligence, she feels invisible, as if her color overshadows her achievements. What Maya desires most is to be recognized for who she truly is, not for the stigma associated with her skin. The challenge becomes even more intense when Sarah, in a moment of cruelty, makes disdainful comments about Maya's abilities. The public humiliation hits the girl's self-esteem hard, making her question whether she will ever be accepted in this new space. However, the situation complicates when Sarah accidentally discovers that Maya is the daughter of Michael, the school principal. Panic sets in for the teacher, who finds herself facing the possibility of facing the consequences of her actions. Michael Williams, a principled man and advocate for inclusion, knows that structural racism still persists in educational institutions. When he learns what happened to his daughter, he decides to act firmly and strategically. He sees the opportunity to transform Maya's pain into a catalyst for meaningful changes in the school. Thus, the confrontation between the old and the new, between prejudice and inclusion, becomes the stage for a fight not only for justice, but also for the reconstruction of values. As Maya recovers from the humiliation, she finds support in her father and a group of friends who understand her struggles. Together, they begin to question the system and structure a plan to change the narrative, one step at a time. Maya's journey is not only about asserting herself as a student, but also about transforming pain into power, humiliation into strength, and injustice into a call to action. What seemed to be an isolated moment of cruelty transforms into an opportunity for growth and overcoming, not only for her, but for everyone around her. This story, filled with emotions and challenges, reveals how true courage can arise amid adversity and how the fight for justice and inclusion can become a collective mission. Maya Williams felt the weight of humiliation pulsing in her heart as she walked through the school. Each step took her back to the classroom, where Sarah Thompson, her teacher, had made cruelly disdainful comments. The laughter of her classmates still echoed in her mind, and the shame almost prevented her from looking anyone in the eye. A wave of insecurity enveloped her, making her question her own abilities. She thought, "Why did this happen to me?" as tears threatened to escape. However, there was a strength within her that still pulsed, a will to fight not to be defined by that moment. As she walked down the hallway, she crossed paths with her best friend Clara, who was waiting for her anxiously. Clara was an outgoing girl, always ready to support her friends. Upon seeing Maya's expression, Clara's cheerful demeanor turned into concern. "Hey, what happened? Are you okay?" she asked, approaching with a sympathetic look. Maya hesitated, but the sincerity in Clara's voice encouraged her to open up. "Ms. Thompson, she humiliated me in front of everyone. She said I'm not that good, I don't know if I can stay here," Maya confessed, her voice trembling. Clara frowned, indignant. "That's not fair. You're one of the smartest students in the class. You can't let her make you feel this way." "Let's talk to the principal," she suggested, determination burning in her eyes. Maya hesitated. The idea of confronting the teacher, and, by extension, the system that allowed such behavior, terrified her. But Clara's proposal ignited a spark of courage within her. "Maybe you're right. If I don't do anything, this will continue," she replied, feeling a bit stronger. Meanwhile, Sarah Thompson, in her corner of the classroom, was still struggling with what she had done. Maya's humiliation made her feel guilty, but her pride and personal convictions prevented her from admitting she could be wrong. "I was just trying to maintain discipline," she thought, but an inner voice questioned, At what cost? The fear of the consequences paralyzed her, creating a barrier between her and the possibility of change. The next day brought new challenges. Maya decided she would not let herself be defeated. With Clara's support, they approached a group of classmates who had also witnessed the scene. Among them was Lucas, a sensitive and observant boy who had been disturbed by the teacher's attitude. He joined them, bringing with him the desire to make a difference. "We need a plan," Lucas said, a determined glint in his eyes. "If we unite, maybe we can make the school hear us." His words resonated with Maya, and she felt her self-confidence reborn. The idea of a collective movement felt powerful. Together, they began to devise a strategy to approach Michael, the principal, and expose the problem. But what should have been a mission of support and solidarity quickly turned into an emotional roller coaster. As they prepared to confront the school authority, anxiety set in. Clara, who always seemed so confident, began to doubt. "What if he doesn't believe us? What if the teacher punishes us for this?" she questioned, her voice hesitant. Maya felt a knot in her stomach. Clara's words hit her, and she remembered how easy it was to be overcome by fear. But then a memory of her mother surfaced, who always encouraged her to fight for what was right. "We have to try for ourselves and for everyone who might be going through this. If we don't do it now, when will we?" Maya said, feeling the strength of her determination. That night, as Maya prepared for the next day, she looked in the mirror and told herself, "I am more than a teacher's opinion. I am capable and deserve to be heard." This affirmation became her mantra, a constant reminder that, despite the obstacles, she was not alone. The day of the meeting with the principal arrived. The group gathered in the hallway, nervous but determined. Each of them faced their own fears, but the hope for change united them. When they entered Michael's office, the tension was palpable. Maya took a deep breath, ready to transform her pain into power, to fight not just for herself, but for everyone who, like her, felt invisible. What started as an isolated act of cruelty was about to turn into a cry for justice and inclusion. The battle against prejudice and oppression was in their hands, and Maya's courage and that of her friends could very well be the beginning of a new era at the school, a step toward a more inclusive and just future. Before we continue with this exciting story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know which city you are watching this video from in the comments. Principal Michael's office was a spacious area, but at that moment it felt small and suffocating for Maya and her friends. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the paper and formality of the place, creating an atmosphere that made everyone nervous. The principal, a middle-aged man with a serious look, greeted them with a nod, but the tension in the room was palpable. Maya could feel her heart racing as she thought of all the expectations weighing on her shoulders. Lucas began to speak, his voice a bit shaky but full of conviction. He laid out what had happened in the classroom, describing not only the situation, but also how the humiliation affected Maya and everyone present. His words were sincere, and the passion for justice shone through in every sentence. However, Michael listened with a neutral expression, which made Maya's anxiety grow. She wondered if he was really listening. When it was Maya's turn to speak, the pressure mounted. The words that had once seemed clear in her mind became a jumbled mess. I just want people at school to feel that they can be respected," she began, her voice trembling. But as she spoke, insecurity began to take over again. "I don't want this to happen to anyone else. I just want to learn and not feel belittled." As she said this, a treacherous tear rolled down her face, but she quickly wiped it away, determined not to let pain defeat her. Michael watched her, but the expression on his face did not change. He seemed to be pondering something, perhaps considering the gravity of the situation. However, the response that followed was a bucket of cold water. "I understand that the situation was difficult, but we need to maintain discipline in the school. Sometimes criticism is necessary for growth," he said, placing his hands on the table. His words cut through the air and Maya felt her heart sink. "But that wasn't criticism, that was humiliation," Clara interjected, her voice filled with indignation. "We're not here just to be criticized. We're here to learn in a safe and respectful environment." Clara's gaze was fierce, and Maya admired her courage. Lucas also spoke up, advocating for the idea that the school should promote an inclusive space. Unfortunately, the principal's response did not change. He was more concerned about the school's image than the students' feelings. The feeling of defeat began to settle in Maya, and she felt as though she had lost a battle. "It's no use," she thought as frustration engulfed her. Maybe I don't have enough strength to change anything. After the meeting, the group left the office, each immersed in their own thoughts. Maya felt as if she had been carrying a heavy stone on her back. The frustration made her question her decision to confront Ms. Thompson. Maybe I should have just let it go, she reflected, as she walked toward the cafeteria with Clara and Lucas by her side. Clara noticed Maya's silence and tried to cheer her up. Don't give up. We still have options. We can take this further, talk to the parents, or maybe create a petition, she suggested, but Maya couldn't see a positive path. The feeling of powerlessness was overwhelming, and the idea of another failure left her distressed. That night at home, Maya couldn't sleep. The principal's words echoed in her mind, and insecurity felt like a monster growing inside her. She wondered if she really had what it took to fight for herself and for others. Amid this turmoil, her mother entered the room. With a worried look, she asked what had happened. Maya hesitated but decided to share the experience. Upon hearing, her mother hugged her and said, "You are strong, Maya. Remember that it's normal to feel fear, but what matters is how you deal with it." These words ignited a small flame within her. However, the idea of having to face Sarah again terrified her. What if the teacher ignored her or worse, attacked her again? The uncertainty was a heavy burden, and she felt increasingly torn between the desire to fight and the wish to hide. In the following days, the situation at school became even more tense. Ms. Thompson noticed the conversation about what had happened and began to act more defensively. She became increasingly critical, and Maya felt that the classes were a battleground. Every dismissive comment hit her like an arrow, and the emotional pressure mounted, making her feel more isolated. Maya's friends tried to comfort her, but she started to feel like a burden. Why am I doing this? I'm just bringing problems for all of us, she thought, as she sank deeper into her own sadness. What should have been a movement for unity seemed to be causing more division and tension, jeopardizing the friendships she valued most. Clara, noticing Maya's internal struggle, decided it was time to act. She gathered with Lucas and other classmates to discuss how they could support Maya and amplify their voices. "We need to show her that we're in this together," Clara said, determined. "This isn't just about her, but about all of us." The group began to plan a way to come together by creating a mural at school where everyone could express their feelings about respect and inclusion. They wanted Maya to know she wasn't alone, that her fight was everyone's fight. However, in the meantime, Maya still felt lost, battling her own inner demons. The pressure of being the spokesperson for change was crushing her. With each new challenge, Maya's journey became more complicated but also richer. She was learning about herself, what it meant to fight, and what was truly important. The tension continued to grow, and the choice between hiding or standing up became clearer. But deep down, a new determination began to blossom, like a flower breaking through concrete. The battle was far from over, but Maya was about to discover that true strength comes from facing fears, no matter how frightening they may seem. Maya was sitting on one of the benches in the cafeteria, her head down while her friends chatted excitedly around her. The mural they were creating to promote respect and inclusion was taking shape, but despite their enthusiasm, Maya felt like a distant spectator. The weight of the emotional pressure she carried seemed increasingly unbearable, and the idea of being the spokesperson for change made her anxious. As her friends laughed and exchanged ideas, Maya noticed a familiar figure entering the cafeteria. It was Sarah, the history teacher, walking toward a nearby table. Maya's heart raced and a chill swept over her. The teacher's expression seemed darker than usual, and when she spotted Maya, a brief, forced smile appeared. But there was no warmth in that smile. It felt more like a veiled threat. Maya turned to Clara, who was beside her, and whispered, "What is she doing here?" Clara, sensing Maya's concern, replied, "Don't worry, we're with you. We'll stand together, no matter what happens." It was then that the atmosphere in the cafeteria changed drastically. Sarah drew everyone's attention. Her voice echoed, firm and authoritative. "I believe it's time to clarify a few things about the recent situation. Some students have decided to question how I conduct my classes, and I would like to say that constructive criticism is part of learning." The tension in the air was palpable, and the gazes of the students turned to Maya and her friends. Maya felt a knot forming in her throat. The teacher's reaction made her feel even more insecure. Looking at her classmates' faces, she noticed that many were silent, as if they feared what might happen next. The pressure made her feel like she was being watched, as if everyone expected her to stand up and defend her cause. But instead, she felt paralyzed. As Sarah continued, Her tone became sharper. "The criticisms I've received are not just about me, but also about the discipline I try to maintain. What you need to understand is that in life, reality can be harsh. And if you don't know how to deal with it, you will face much greater difficulties in the future." Her words cut through the air, and a feeling of outrage began to grow inside Maya. It was at that moment that a classmate, Pedro, stood up. He was a quiet student who rarely spoke up. "But this isn't about discipline, it's about respect. No one should be humiliated in the classroom. This isn't learning," he said, with a firm voice. The cafeteria fell silent. Maya looked at Pedro, surprised, feeling a wave of hope. His courage seemed to spread, and other students began to murmur in support. The teacher, however, was not willing to back down. "If you have a problem with me, then you can come to me individually. I will not tolerate disrespect in my workplace." Her response brought a seriousness to the atmosphere, and the voices of support began to wither. Maya felt the room was on the verge of exploding into open conflict. The fear and insecurity that had accumulated inside her were at a boiling point. It was a decisive moment. Maya's heart raced, and she realized she needed to do something. A part of her wanted to hide, but another, braver part was rising up. With a monumental effort, Maya stood up. Everyone's gaze turned to her, and the world seemed to stop. "Miss Thompson, this isn't fair. No one here is disrespecting you. We just want a place where we can learn and feel safe," she said, her voice trembling but clear. The weight of the words freed her from her hesitation, and for a moment she felt strong. The teacher stared at her, and silence settled in again. Maya realized that even under pressure, she was doing the right thing. The silent support of her friends encouraged her. The room was filled with hopeful glances, and she knew she was not alone. After that statement, something changed. It wasn't just Sarah's reaction, which seemed to hesitate in the face of Maya's courage. It was the way the students began to unite, exchanging looks of support and determination. The classroom, which had previously felt like a battlefield, was now transforming into a space of solidarity. Maya felt a wave of emotions wash over her. The fear was still there, but now there was something more, a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that despite her insecurities, what she was doing mattered. It was a step toward a change that would benefit not only her but everyone around her. With her heart racing but determined, Maya was about to discover that true strength was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And for the first time, she felt that perhaps things could change. This revelation led her to reconsider her choices and understand that the struggle was worth it, not just for her, but for everyone who felt invisible. The battle was just beginning, but Maya was ready to face it. Maya stood up, her heart pounding as the words she had just spoken echoed in the room. The silence was heavy, but there was a new energy in the air. The expressions of her classmates shifted, and Maya realized she was not the only one feeling helpless. There was a collective sense of dissatisfaction, a desire for things to be different. Sarah, the teacher, seemed to be in conflict. Her gaze flickered between anger and surprise. Maya knew she had crossed a line, but the courage she felt pushed her to continue. "We need a safe space to learn," she said again, her voice now a little firmer. "This isn't about disrespect. It's about our dignity." The murmur of support began to spread through the cafeteria. Some people nodded in agreement, while others murmured words of encouragement. Maya felt she had ignited a spark, but that same spark left her unsettled. Although she was being supported, the fear of what might happen next still lingered. What would follow now? After that morning, the atmosphere at school became tense. The students who had once supported her now seemed hesitant. Some approached Maya, congratulating her on her courage, but many remained silent, as if the fear of retaliation had paralyzed them. Conversations in the hallways began to include whispers about what had happened, and Sarah's figure became a shadow looming over everyone. In the days that followed, Maya began to feel the pressure and weight of what she had started. The teacher avoided her in the hallways, and when they crossed paths, Sarah's gaze was icy. Maya didn't know how to deal with this new dynamic. The indignation she felt now mingled with anxiety, and as she tried to focus on her classes, her mind wandered, thinking about what could happen. One afternoon, while walking home, Maya ran into Clara. "Are you okay?" Clara asked, concerned. Maya hesitated. "I don't know. I feel like I did the right thing, but I'm scared of the consequences. What if Sarah decides to punish me somehow?" Clara looked at her with empathy. "I understand, but you showed that you care. We can't let fear stop us from fighting for what's right. You're not alone, Maya. We're all in this together. Her friend's words brought some relief, but insecurity still followed her. In the following days, the tension at school increased. Some people began to avoid Maya, while others openly supported her. The school's social media was flooded with debates about what had happened, and Maya found herself at the center of a discussion that increasingly made her anxious. She began to feel like a target, and the emotional pressure seemed to only grow. A week after the cafeteria incident, Maya decided she needed to deal with her feelings. On a rainy night, she sat in her room with a notebook in hand. She started to write, putting her worries and fears on paper. As she wrote, she felt a kind of freedom. It was as if the words were a relief from the pressure she felt inside. She wrote about her insecurities, about what it meant to be a spokesperson for change, and about how it made her feel vulnerable. The next day, when she arrived at school, Maya found a group of students gathered in a corner of the courtyard. They were discussing how they could come together to promote a more respectful and inclusive environment. Hearing this, a wave of hope washed over her. "Can I join you?" she asked hesitantly. The group turned to her, and a warm smile spread among them. From that day on, Maya began to actively engage in the discussions. She proposed ideas and organized meetings, and gradually began to feel that she was reconnecting with her own strength. The feeling of being alone started to dissipate, and the unity with her classmates brought a new energy. However, Sarah's presence was still a shadow. The teacher remained cold and distant, and Maya knew there was still a difficult road ahead. But now she was no longer willing to let herself be defeated. With every step, she remembered the support she had received and the importance of fighting for a space where everyone felt respected. Maya was starting to understand that change wouldn't happen overnight, but with each small act of courage, she felt stronger, and although obstacles still existed, she was determined to face them head-on, knowing that with the support of her friends, she could overcome any challenge that came her way. Maya was at a turning point in her life. After her courage to speak in public, she felt that she had awakened something both within herself and among her peers. However, the reality of school, with its tense atmosphere and the coldness of Sarah, the teacher, weighed on her shoulders. The pressure of being the spokesperson for change was immense, and Maya struggled against her own fears. One day, while looking at herself in the mirror, she realized that the insecurity she felt was present not only at school, but also in the small things of everyday life. She began to reflect on how she had always been afraid to expose herself, to show herself. But this struggle was transforming her. The group that had formed around her encouraged her, and slowly she began to trust herself more. During the meetings, Maya started to feel more comfortable expressing her ideas, and with each contribution, her confidence grew. It was as if she were rebuilding herself piece by piece after what had seemed like a collapse. One morning, while walking to school, Maya had an epiphany. She realized that success was not just about winning arguments or being the most popular in class. True success for her lay in creating an environment where everyone felt comfortable sharing their opinions and experiences. This new perspective motivated her even more to fight for what she believed in. However, the tension with Sarah still bothered her. Maya knew that the teacher was an authoritative figure, and the uncertainty about how she would react to her new initiatives made her uneasy. One day, during a meeting where they were discussing ways to promote a more inclusive environment, Maya decided it was time to face this situation head-on. She remembered Clara's words, "We are all in this together." With her heart racing, she made a plan. The next day, after class, Maya headed to Sarah's office. Her stomach was churning, but she was determined. Upon entering, she saw the teacher organizing papers with the stern expression that had become common between them. Maya took a deep breath and began to speak. "Sarah, I would like to talk about what happened last week. I know you may not agree with what I did, but I think it's important that we can talk about it." To her surprise, Sarah listened to her. Although the teacher did not show clear enthusiasm, there was a subtle change in her demeanor. Maya realized that by opening a space for conversation, she was not only dealing with her fears, but also challenging Sarah to reflect on her own attitude. The teacher, although still reserved, began to talk about her own insecurities, revealing that she was as pressured as the students. This was a real turning point for Maya. The empathy that arose in that moment showed her that true strength lay in understanding others. Over time, their relationship began to change. Sarah, still with her rigid demeanor, started to show an interest in listening to the students. Maya realized that her courage had triggered a chain reaction, and this made her even more determined. Now it was not just about her, it was about creating a space where everyone could be heard and respected. The group of students became increasingly active, organizing events and discussions, and with each new activity, Maya felt she was leaving a positive mark on the school. The friendships that formed during this process were unexpected, but valuable. Students who had once been only familiar faces were now friends sharing dreams and concerns. This support network helped her face both external and internal challenges. She learned that transformation was not a linear path. There were days when she felt weak, days when her self-confidence wavered. But alongside her friends, she began to apply the lessons she had learned throughout this journey. What once seemed like a burden was now an opportunity for growth. Maya saw that each challenge was a chance to strengthen herself. Conversations that had once seemed impossible became more frequent. She realized that even in adversity, there was always a lesson to be learned. And so, Maya continued to grow. In her moments of doubt, she remembered the first time she stood up to speak. That initial courage was now the foundation of her new identity. Over time, Maya became a symbol of change in the school. Her journey of overcoming was not just about fighting against a system, but about learning to trust herself and others. The transformation in her life was evident, and she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. Maya was at a crucial point in her journey. The school, which once seemed like an oppressive and fear-filled place, now pulsed with new energy. The group of students that had come together around her was growing and strengthening, but there was one challenge still looming over their shoulders: the next event they would organize to promote inclusion and empathy. This was their chance to consolidate everything they had learned, but also their greatest fear. The idea was simple: an open debate where all students could express their opinions and experiences. However, as the day approached, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that everything could fall apart. She knew that Sarah, the teacher, was still an imposing figure and might not take the proposal well. The fear of a collapse left her restless for days, but she remembered Clara's words, "We are all in this together." With that in mind, she decided that she could not give up. On the morning of the event, the tension in the air was palpable. The students were nervous, and the classroom, usually noisy, was unusually silent. Maya took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She looked around and saw familiar faces, friends who were there because of her. That gave her a bit of courage. The event began, and the first speeches were timid, but soon the atmosphere started to change. When it was her turn to speak, Maya stood up, feeling everyone's eyes on her. She felt a knot in her stomach, but she remembered everything she had experienced up to that point. "Today we are here to listen to each other," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "We need a space where we can speak without fear of being judged. I know it's often difficult, but that's how we will grow together." To her surprise, some students began to speak up, sharing personal experiences they had never told before. Each story brought to light the pain and struggles many faced daily. Maya realized that the room was transforming into a safe place where empathy was beginning to bloom. However, in the midst of this atmosphere of unity, Sarah entered the room. With her critical gaze, she observed what was happening, and the tension increased. Maya felt her stomach tighten. The teacher began to speak, her authoritative voice cutting through the air. "This is a disrespect to the school's rules," Sarah said with a stern look. "Open discussions can lead to disorder and disrespect." The environment, which had been filled with hope, froze. Fear began to loom over Maya again. Could this be the end of it all? But in that decisive moment, something inside her ignited. Maya remembered what she had learned, the importance of fighting for a safe and inclusive space. "Sarah, please listen. We are trying to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing. It is not disrespect. It is mutual respect," she said, her voice trembling but full of determination. Sarah looked at her, and for a brief moment Maya saw a weakness in the teacher's expression. It was as if behind the rigidity there was a woman who was also struggling with her insecurities. "I understand that you have your rules, but perhaps it's time to reconsider what truly matters here," Maya continued, feeling the strength of her words. The silence in the room was oppressive, but instead of backing down, Sarah began to reflect. Slowly and hesitantly, the teacher distanced herself from the rigidity that characterized her. "Perhaps I have been too harsh," she admitted, almost in a whisper. "I believe everyone deserves to be heard. Let's reshape this together." The room exploded in a wave of relief and joy. The tensions that had once seemed insurmountable began to dissipate. Maya felt warmth flooding her chest. The transformation she sought was not just hers, it was everyone's. She had not only managed to challenge an authority figure, but also opened a dialogue that could change the school's dynamic. Over time, the relationship between Maya and Sarah became an example of mutual learning and growth. Sarah became more approachable and attentive, and the students began to feel safer expressing their opinions. The debate, which had started as a test of courage, transformed into a catalyst for change. Maya realized that facing fear and seeking dialogue was the true path to overcoming. She not only reinvented herself, but also helped others find themselves as well. The friendship that solidified among the students and between them and Sarah became a testament that empathy and understanding were more powerful than any rigid rule. In the end, Maya not only overcame her challenges, but also became a source of inspiration. She learned that true strength lies in opening up to others, and that the most significant changes often start with a simple conversation. After the tumult of the debate, Maya still felt the adrenaline coursing through her body. The room was in a state of euphoria, but also reflection. The students surrounded her, congratulating her for what she had done. "You were amazing, Maya," said Lucas, one of the shyest in the group. "I never thought I could speak like that with the teacher." Maya smiled, but her mind was still occupied. What would happen now? The change in Sarah's stance was a positive sign, but she knew the journey was far from over. In the following days, the students began to meet more frequently to discuss ideas and plan new activities. The atmosphere at school was changing, and that was reflected in daily interactions. The students were more open with each other, and even conversations in the hallways seemed friendlier. On the other hand, Sarah gradually began to get closer to the students. She attended meetings and encouraged the expression of different viewpoints. Maya, although still feeling some apprehension, noticed that the teacher was making an effort to understand the students' concerns. In one of the meetings, Sarah commented, "You showed me that school can be a place of dialogue, not imposition. I'm here to learn from you too." The teacher's words had a profound impact on the group. One morning, Maya decided it was time to have an honest conversation with Sarah. After class, she approached the teacher, a bit nervous. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a moment?" The teacher nodded, and they both sat at an empty table. "I want to thank you for opening space for us. Your change was very important for all of us," Maya said sincerely. Sarah looked her in the eyes and, with a slight smile, replied, "I was impressed with the courage you showed. I really needed to hear your voices. Sometimes we forget that education should be an exchange, not an imposition." Maya felt a relief upon hearing those words. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As time went by, the school began to organize more events that promoted inclusion. The weekly meetings became a regular space where students could share their experiences and discuss relevant issues. Maya noticed that what had once been a place of fear was now becoming a home for many. She felt she was part of something bigger, something that could impact the lives of many. At home, the changes were also noticeable. Maya started talking about her experiences at school with her parents, and the dialogue between them intensified. She remembered how difficult it had been to express her feelings before, and how it was now becoming more natural. Her mother praised her, saying she was so proud of her, that Maya was becoming a leader. This recognition made her reflect on her journey. Maya realized that the difficulties she faced were not just personal challenges, but opportunities for growth. Each fear she overcame, each difficult conversation she had, transformed her into a stronger and more empathetic person. She now understood that true strength lay not in avoiding conflict, but in facing it with an open heart. However, it wasn't just Maya who had changed. Other students began to stand out as well. Clara, who once felt invisible, was now one of the main organizers of the inclusion events. Lucas, who used to be shy, started sharing his opinions confidently. The group was becoming a community united by a common purpose. Maya looked at her friends during one of the meetings and felt a wave of gratitude. They were all in this journey together, and each had contributed to the transformation. It was a cycle of support and love that spread throughout the school. The fight for a safe and inclusive space had become a collective mission. At the end of each meeting, Maya always remembered to emphasize the importance of dialogue. She would say that they should never forget they were there to listen and learn from one another, with a smile on her lips. That phrase became a mantra among the students. Life at school had changed, and Maya now not only felt a part of it, but also a catalyst for transformation. She learned that by opening up to others, she not only helped herself but also everyone around her. The connections she formed and the lessons she learned would accompany her for life. Looking around her environment, Maya realized that the school she once knew had transformed into a vibrant and welcoming place. The interactions that were once marked by fear and insecurity were now filled with laughter and lively conversations. Each student, with their stories and experiences, contributed to an atmosphere of understanding and respect. The journey that began with an act of courage in the debate had unfolded into a collective movement for change. As she reflected on everything that had happened, Maya felt a wave of gratitude. She remembered the moment she decided to stand up and speak, even with fear paralyzing her. That decision not only transformed her, but also impacted everyone around her. Lucas, Clara, and many other students learned to express themselves and fight for a space where their voices would be heard. What started as a small act of resistance evolved into a quiet yet powerful revolution within the school. Still, even with all the changes, the scars of the past did not completely disappear. Maya knew that for the transformation to be lasting, everyone needed to continue working together. During one of the meetings, she decided it was time to address what had happened before. She said they needed to remember that change does not happen overnight. It is a process that requires patience and continuous effort, looking into the eyes of each of her peers. By doing this, she not only reinforced the importance of unity, but also of resilience. However, what Maya did not expect was that amid this search for a safe space, the shadow of her fears still lingered. Sarah, the teacher, despite her efforts, still carried some of her old attitudes. On a particularly tense day during a meeting, she made a comment that sounded like a criticism. For Maya, this was a reminder that change is not linear, and that, no matter how much everyone wanted to evolve, old habits could resurface. Feeling disheartened, Maya decided it was time to confront Sarah clearly and honestly. In a frank conversation, she expressed her concerns and frustrations. She said they needed to be better to one another, and that included Sarah with emotion in her voice. To her surprise, the teacher listened. From that conversation, a new alliance was formed. Sarah finally understood the impact of her words and committed to being more careful and respectful. From that point on, the relationship between the students and Sarah strengthened. The school environment continued to transform, and the friendship among the students flourished. They learned that true strength lay not in avoiding conflicts, but in facing them with empathy and understanding. With this, each began to feel part of something bigger, a true group united by inclusion and respect. Maya realized that the journey she had started was not just about her, it was about everyone, and above all it was about the ability to listen and to be heard. She learned that the most valuable lessons come from shared experiences, and that friendship, even the most unexpected, can change the way we see the world. In the end, Maya wanted everyone to know that, although the road to change is long and full of challenges, the most important thing is not to give up. She invited her peers to share their own stories and experiences, creating a safe space where everyone could express themselves. She said they should continue this journey together, with a sparkle in her eyes. Each voice matters, each story is important. Thus, Maya's story became a call to action, an invitation for everyone to come together and fight for a more inclusive and welcoming world. And in the end, she knew that her actions had echoed beyond the walls of the school, inspiring others to stand up and make a difference in their communities. The message was clear. Change begins with a step, and everyone has the power to make a difference.